Imagine a society where well-being mattered more than profit. How good would that be? Progress wouldn't be measured based on how productive, exhausted, and burnt out people were, but on well-being, how much well-being there was in society. I'm here today to argue that this future isn't just possible, it's essential if we're to build a healthier society. It's over 100 years ago now since my favourite book was published, The Ragged Trouser Philanthropists by Robert Tressel. Tressel describes how the poor health of the hero of the book, painter and decorator Frank Owen, could not be solved by medicine alone. Because the truth was, what Frank needed, just like the millions of other people out there, was social medicine. He needed proper conditions of life. He needed a stable job, a warm home, access to nutritious food. But quotes like this aren't the only reason for why it's my favourite book. Nor is it because we share the same name. Tressel was actually his pen name. His real name was Robert Noonan. Is it because of our connection to the same city? Liverpool, as you can tell, is the place that I was born and raised, but it was also the place that Tressel died and was buried in a pauper's grave. No. The real reason's because of his message. Does anyone know what his message was? His message was a message of hope and unity. What he was saying to his comrades all them years ago was, listen lads, this suffering that you're experiencing here, living hand to mouth, it's not inevitable, you know. There is another way. A healthier, fairer future is possible, but we're going to have to come together. We're going to have to fight for it. Unfortunately, Robert's message did not get through, and that economic system that he so strongly condemned didn't change, and we're still living with the costs of it today. Lives being cut short, people dying prematurely because of where they live. It's wrong that a baby boy born today in Kensington, Liverpool, can expect to live 10 years less and more than 20 years in poorer health than a baby boy born in Kensington, London. From a very young age, I've been fascinated by health and sought to understand where health is best. What is it that these healthy places do better than others? How do the social norms, the infrastructure, how do the policies shape the way people live? How do they support people to live happy, healthy, and fulfilling lives? And there's probably lots of reasons for this. But I think growing up in Liverpool definitely played its part. Liverpool is a city with a history rooted not just in public health, but social justice. Take a walk around this city and you'll see signs of it everywhere. In the city centre, you'll come across the famous pub, Dr. Duncan's, named after the very first medical officer of health, William Duncan. But Liverpool isn't just a city of firsts. It's a city that's endured and continues to endure a range of different social challenges. It's one of our most deprived cities. Many of its communities are extremely deprived. And from a young age, I saw this hardship. I saw the poverty. I saw it not just in the crumbling infrastructure. I saw it etched on people's faces. I saw what a life filled of a disproportionate amount of physical stresses and psychosocial stresses looks like. And even at that young age, I could see lives being cut short, but I didn't understand why. I didn't have the life experience, the critical insight to make sense of it all. But of course, we get older. I got older. We see different places. We speak to more people. We hear their stories. And it all started to make a bit more sense. For well over a decade now, I've taught and researched across many different subject areas: sports science, psychology, public health. And all this experience has taught me something. What I've learned is humans are just like plants. We are dependent upon certain social conditions being met in order to survive but also thrive. Pot a plant in lousy soil, deprive it of sunlight, deprive it of water. You'd be a fool to think that it was ever going to survive. And humans are no different. Yes, we have survival needs. We need food, water, and shelter. But we also have psychological needs. We need to feel secure in ourselves. We crave control over our lives. We crave belonging and a sense of purpose. Look around society now, and there's plenty of signs showing that them needs aren't being met. 1988 is the year I was born. Picture this. Me sat next to my 70-year-old grandmother who survived the war. And I say, Sally, 40 years from now, we're going to be faster, more efficient, more digitally connected than ever before. We're going to have more choice, more comfort, more convenience than ever before. We're going to own more than we've ever owned before. But more people are going to be struggling psychologically. What do you think she would have said? Do you think she would have believed me? She wouldn't have, would she? But on this occasion, Sally would have been wrong not to have. Because despite decades of economic growth, despite more materially richer lives, more people are struggling psychologically, resorting to prescription medication to deal with their psychological insecurity. Anxiety, depression, loneliness, it's all going up. For decades, there's been a U-shaped curve to well-being, high in the early stages of life, dips in middle age, and it picks back up in later age. But that theory no longer holds. Why? Because the wheels have fallen off for thousands of young people. But there's something else. We were promised less work. In the 1930s, a famous economist predicted we'd be working 15-hour weeks by now. But that hasn't happened. Stress at work is rising and more people feel burnt out. Out of interest, who here feels as though they're having to run faster just to stand still? Yeah, you're not alone. Many organisations are expecting more with less. But there's a reason for this. There's a reason for this. And it's linked to a question that Frank Owen was asking all them years ago. Can an economic system driven by profit ever ensure well-being for all? In pursuit of a bigger economy, what we've done is create a culture that's fast-paced, competitive, individualistic, materialistic, exploitative, and unequal. These things don't provide the right conditions for good health or psychological security. In fact, they are to the mind what rust is to iron. But our obsession with growth has done something much, much worse. It's distracted us all from the real game changers. Number one, reprogramming our economy and putting well-being first. And two, holding governments accountable for the policies that would truly benefit all our well-being. Because the truth is, a profit-driven system is fantastic for growth. It generates loads of money, but it provides the perfect conditions for exploitation where there's a profit to be made. Charles Dickens was telling us this 2 centuries ago in his famous novels. In A Christmas Carol, he introduced us to the hard-working yet severely impoverished Cratchit family. They were the symbol of the working poor. You had Bob Cratchit, the father, going to work, working tirelessly, yet being severely underpaid by Ebenezer Scrooge. And we saw the economic and the physical consequences that this had on him, his family, but especially his disabled sick son, Tiny Tim. A century later, in The Road to Wigan Pier, George Orwell describes the horrendous working conditions endured by the miners, crawling distances of up to 3 miles just to get to work. Imagine that. Imagine the pain that they must have been going through. But that's not the worst of it. They were not even paid for that labour. That's not all. Even as consumers, we see that exploitation. We're led to believe that we're choosing freely. But what if we aren't? What if our health choices are more controlled than we realise? A handful of companies own the menu from which we choose. These companies don't just manufacture products that are harmful and addictive. They aggressively market them. They employ some of the brightest minds around to exploit mine and your emotions for profit. They own the news and the social media platforms. This means that they can control what we hear, what we see, and this influences how we feel. Every year they spend billions of pounds lobbying government to get what they want. Well, we know what they want. They want more money for themselves and less for everyone else. But I'm going to tell you something they don't want. They don't want a population of citizens that comes together and fights for healthier living and working conditions. No, they don't want that, because that would be against their interests. But the good news is, it doesn't have to be this way. History tells us that change can happen. Change does happen, but change only happens when people stick together. A century ago now, when women were quite rightfully fighting for what was theirs, the right to vote, they came together around a shared interest, shared vision. Yes, they struggled, but they stuck it out, and they eventually got what they were after. The trade union movement did exactly the same. The democracy that we all enjoy today is part of that collective solidarity. For anyone who's been fortunate enough to visit places like Amsterdam and some of the surrounding Dutch cities, you will have seen droves and droves of people out and about cycling. These people don't have the cycling gene. They're not biologically programmed to want to cycle. What they have is an environment that makes it safe and enjoyable to cycle. But the thing is, this hasn't always existed. In fact, in the 1970s, many people were injured and died on the roads, but communities came together and they said, this is wrong, we're going to put a stop to it. And they set up the Stop the Child Murder campaign. And through strong political activism, they got that investment and they made streets safe again. For all those who benefit most from our economic system, they say there is no alternative. But remember this, if we believe that there is no possibility of change, we guarantee that there will be no change for the better. What is needed right now more than ever before is a well-being movement. But in order to build that movement, it will require us all sharing new stories. And at the heart of them stories has to be the idea that health is our most precious asset. But above all, what surrounds us shapes us, including our health. Right now in the UK, one of the richest nations on earth, far too many people are getting sick and struggling psychologically because they do not have the right building blocks in place to live a happy, healthy, and fulfilling life. People want a stable job that's well paid and doesn't leave them burnt out. They want to live in an affordable home that's warm in a safe community. Yes, they want access to clean air, green space, and nutritious food, but they also want the freedom to make healthy choices without being manipulated. When these building blocks aren't in place, it doesn't just have a toxic effect on the body, it has a toxic effect on the mind through the insecurity that it creates. If we want a healthier future, we will have to ensure that these building blocks are in place for everyone. In pursuit of a bigger economy, and by putting profit before people, we've decimated these building blocks for far too many people. And it's this that we need to put right. I want to leave you now with a message from someone who learned too late the consequences of silence. The German pastor Martin Niemöller. He said, first they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. But then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak out for me. We can all use our voices twice this week. Once, to pressure government to put well-being first. And second, to give others hope, to reassure them that a healthier, fairer future is possible, but only if we unite and fight for it. Thank you.